This is the fourth interview for the Vietnam Veterans Oral History Project for 2025 in commemoration of the 50th anniversary of the end of the conflict. We are joined today by Jerry Smallbear, Sergeant E5 in the United States Army. Thank you for being here today and thank you for your service.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, to start us off, where were you born?
Right here in Newton in Catawba County, North Carolina.
And can you tell us a little bit about your family, your parents? Did you have siblings?
My mother, my father, and I had one brother who was approximately a year and a half older than me, and he was a victim of the polio epidemic. And so even though he was older than me, we both started the first grade. They didn't even have kindergarten back then, and we started the first grade together. And that affected him all his life. It was in his leg, and he walked with a limp for the rest of his life. But that never stopped him from doing anything.
And how about your parents? What were they like, and what did they do?
Well, they were very good parents, and they both came from farms, and from the past that I can remember. At first, we were very poor, and we were living in a house on South College Avenue that was divided into 3 apartments, and we lived in the downstairs, had our share of roaches and mice and other things, but our parents, my father worked, my mother stayed home with us, and my brother got polio, I think, when he was 5 years old. So she stayed with us, and they were very. I mean, even though we were poor, we had food. It wasn't always like what you wanted, but it was nevertheless, they were always good. All through our lives, they were very good.
And were any family members part of the military?
Yes, my dad was in the U.S. Army. He came out as a sergeant, um, and he was in Germany, and he was in the medical field. He was trying to think of the word. He was a medic, okay, in Germany. So,
Okay. And what were your first thoughts about the war in Vietnam?
well, my first thought was I was pretty young at that time, and so when it first came on TV, my dad used to sit and watch the news. That was something he would do every afternoon. He'd watch the news, and when it first came on TV, uh, I didn't really think much of it because it just seemed so far away in terms of not only where they were, but also far away in my mind as to what was actually happening. And so, I that was my first thoughts of the war.
And do you know what your friends and family thought about it?
Okay, well, I went on to when I was like 18 years old.
Yeah.
And my thoughts uh, progressed as I was entering college, and I was against the war, and I was against the draft. And my friends and families, I never discussed that with them. I did discuss with my mom and dad uh, when the time came that I was against the war, I was against the draft, and I was hoping they would say, "Well, then just don't go." But they, my dad went, and so like they just left it up to me. They would support me no matter what I decided, and I decided that, well, my dad was in the military, and so like my choices were to go to Canada, go to jail, or go to into the military, and so I chose to go into the military.
So, knowing that you were drafted, right?
Yes.
Yes. Can you tell us about when you found out you were drafted? Like the day of?
Well, the day of was May. Well, that was the day I entered. I'm not really sure the day I was drafted, but uh, I just remember that I was drafted, and I remembered I was against the draft again. And then I thought more about the war, and I realized that was something that was 10,000 miles away, and I didn't want to be put in a position that I may have to take someone's life. Now, my actual draft date was May the 5th, 1969.
What were your family and friends' reactions to you getting drafted? And did it feel like it changed any of your relationships?
Can we go back one?
Yeah, sure.
What
What were your thoughts on the protests?
the draft dodgers and the protests? I was okay with it because, again, I was against the war. And one of our chief justices at one time in past had said, in a country where the people don't voluntarily fight to defend their country probably isn't worth defending. And so, I've always felt that way. These people were 10,000 miles away, and there's been all kinds of theories about why that we were in that war, and but I didn't see those people as being a threat to our country.
And what were I know you said your parents kind of just left the decision up to you. What were your friends' reactions to you getting drafted? Do you feel like it changed any of your relationships?
Not at that time, no. I didn't speak to anyone, to my friends really, about that. We just went ahead and, up until the point I was drafted, we went ahead and just lived our lives like we were before. We did the things we did, and so that was something that we never discussed.
What was leaving to go to training like for you? And where was your basic training?
My basic training was at Fort Bragg in Fayetteville, and it was like, I've thought about it this way many times. It was like being herded like cattle to be slaughtered. And there were a lot of Catawba County people that went to Vietnam a lot. And that was just the way I felt about it, that I didn't want to go, but I was going to be going anyway.
And this is not one of the questions that we asked, but I should have asked at the beginning. What years were you in service?
I was in from 1969 to 1971.
Okay. So right in the heart of the conflict.
I was in Vietnam in 70. So.
Gotcha. What was it like? What was your first day like? What do you remember about your first day in training?
I remember the bus pulling into Fort Bragg, and the next thing I know, the drill sergeants, one of them jumps on the bus and starts yelling at us, and everything is hectic, and it's very demeaning, very disrespectful, and I wasn't used to that kind of behavior. And once you got off the bus, it was like, well, even on the bus, you felt the heat, because this was in May. So it was like really, really hot. And then all these drill sergeants were all around you and yelling at you, telling you to do this, do that. And you did whatever you could to satisfy them.
How were the people around you? Did you make friends with any of the other people that were in your unit?
No. That was one thing I didn't want to do, is make friends. And I'm not sure of all the reasons that was, but I know I just wasn't comfortable to make friends. Now, as far as associating with people, with the other soldiers, I did that. I was a squad leader from the time I entered the military, even in basic training. And so, like, I just tried to make things go as good as I possible from myself and the members of my squad.
What was your daily routine in training?
And that was even worse, getting up like at 4:30 in the morning. Uh, I was not a morning person then, and I'm still not a morning person. But you got up at 4:30, you got dressed as quick as you could, you whatever you had to do to get ready for the day, and then the next thing you know, you go on a 1, 2, 3 mile, 4 mile run, and then you come back, you had breakfast, and then you started your training, whatever it may be.
And what were your instructors like?
Well, if AI would have been back in those days, I would say they were uh, trained to be very rough, very demanding. Sometimes uh, they were they would physically, well, I don't know exact word to use here, assault people, other soldiers, if they did something wrong or didn't do it the way they thought they should. And so, um, did I answer your question?
Yeah, you did.
Okay.
You did.
I'm going to go further. They were loud, abusive, and they had no tolerance.
Okay. And what was the hardest and easiest part of training?
Well, the only thing I have there is that the hardest part at that time was being outdoors because of the heat. The best part was being indoors. And uh, I did have some special training after basic training. I went to AIT, which everybody went to, I suppose. And then uh, during AIT, and I may discuss this at a later point, but during AIT, everything I did was so good. Uh, before I went into the military, I'd go hunting a lot with my family, but I never could hit anything. But once I went into basic training, I could hit everything I shot at, and all the other training, with grenades and other weapons, I was excellent at. And so when I got into AIT, the same thing happened. And uh, about a month before we were scheduled to end our AIT training, we were on a what's called a bivouac, and we had a mission to take out this machine gun nest that was about uh, 500, 1,000 yards away. And the weeds were as high as my head, and I was carrying an M60 machine gun plus an M16 plus the ammunition for both. And so it was hard for me to even get through the weeds and the briars, but I wasn't the only one. And so eventually, instead of us being spread out in a wide area, we all got behind each other in one line so we could make it through the undergrowth easier. And the heat was still in the 90s, and our commanding officer just put a stop to it all right at once and lined us all up in a formation and started chewing us out for doing what we were doing. And that's when I found out that we were going, as he said, you didn't know it when you came here, but you already had orders to go to Vietnam. And so standing out in that heat and going through what we were going through, it was like that was the last thing we wanted to hear, or I wanted to hear. But nevertheless, that's what happened. And about 2 weeks before we were to end, I got a call to go to our captain's office, which a lot of times wouldn't be good, but this time it turned out to be good. And what he called me in for was that I had qualified to go to NCO training, which meant that I would be a E5 or E6 when I came out of training. And that would be my rank when I go to Vietnam. Now, he gave me a choice. I didn't have to do that, but two thoughts came to my mind. One was, well, this is going to be, I think, a 12-week training. It was 12 weeks from one part and 10 weeks in another. But I said, well, the war may end. Well, that didn't happen. But if I'm going to Vietnam, I want all the training I can get. And so I said, yes, sir, I will do that. And so I entered NCO Academy at Fort Benning, Georgia. And there I did equally as well. And so I was glad to get that training. And then after I left Fort Benning, I went to Fort Bragg to actually help train new recruits or new draftees that were coming into the system. I did that for 10 weeks. And then I had about, I think, 10 days off before I was to go to Vietnam.
What did you do in your downtime while you were at Fort Benning and back at Fort Bragg?
Basically, in your downtime, if you didn't get to have a pass to go off base or go home or whatever, then you tried to get your stuff ready for the next day, or you just tried to rest, or you tried to call home, just tried to sleep late for if you could. Of course, they had chow at a certain time, so if you wanted to eat, you had to be up by a certain time. But other than that,
Did you make any friends during your specialty training, or did you try to keep yourself?
no, I never did that. And I think in the back of my mind, it was that I didn't want to make any friends because I didn't want to lose any friends. I'd already lost some friends that had been to Vietnam before I went. That their names are on the monument out here at the courthouse now, and every day I go by there, I do a ceremonial, native ceremonial prayer. Sometimes I stop there and do that, and honor them, and and which leads me to say that I think a lot of people, and I can understand that if you've never been through it, you would never know what what people have gone through. But I think that somehow or another, the schools never taught it. I'm still not sure they teach anything about it much. But I think that the atrocities of the war, uh, the men and women that are on the wall in Vietnam, in Washington D.C., which I've been to one time, and it was very difficult, and I haven't been back since. I thought about going, but it's. I remember how tough it was the first time, and it was very emotional, very difficult.
How often did you exchange letters with your loved ones back home?
Well, I started to say as often as I could, but on the other hand, sometimes I could, but it was just, what was I going to say? I mean, it was like every day basically was pretty much the same. I mean, there were exceptions, but, um, you know, I just didn't have that much to say, and like, so I didn't write home very often, and I never got letters very often either. I was married at the time went into Vietnam, but my wife was not very uh, well, and I don't blame her at all because she was put in a difficult situation just like I was, and so and she was working, and so I didn't have much communication with her either. The only the only times that I really had communications with him was whenever we were allowed time and I could go to the USO, and which I think is a great organization. And there I got to call home, and there I got to eat actual real good food too, which I wasn't accustomed to eating in the field.
Were parts of military life easier to adapt to than others? What was easy and what was more difficult?
Wow. And when it comes to the easy part, that's something I have difficulty giving you an answer for. What was really difficult was being away from your family, seeing the death and destruction all around you, and being a part of that. And um, I I was brought up in a very uh, calm, if you want, just a peaceful like environment. And so for me to go from that environment to into a war where you were shooting at people and people were shooting at you, bombs were all around and everything else, it was like it was a very nothing was easy.
Mm. When did you did answer when you found out you were being shipped overseas? So when you graduated from your second specialty training and you were actually getting shipped overseas, were you shipped to Vietnam directly or were you stationed somewhere else before?
Well, like I say, I went to after Fort Benning, I went to Fort Jackson, and then I had 10 days, and then I went to took the bus to Charlotte, I think, and then from Charlotte, I think we took the bus to Fort Bragg, and from and then from Fort Bragg to Fort Benning, Fort Jackson, and then when I got on the plane to go to Vietnam, we went to Fort Dix, New Jersey first, which why I don't know. But then after that, we went to not sure what the port was, but it was in Alaska, which was a beautiful place. But we were only there a couple of days. From Alaska, we went to Japan or the Philippines. I'm not sure the order of that, but anyway, we went to Japan and the Philippines, uh, and we only stayed there maybe one night at each place. And from the Philippines, I believe, is where I left there, and that's when we took the flight into Vietnam.
Did you tell your family? Were you allowed to tell your family before you were shipped to Vietnam?
Well, when I found out I had orders to go there, I did, yes.
What were their reactions?
Well, you know, they were they were kind of sad, I would say. If they were hoping that wouldn't be the case, like I was, but it was, and I chose to go, and so it was like we really didn't talk that much about it because they were respectful toward me in the sense that They didn't want to ask me questions or fill my head with anything, I guess they felt like if I wanted to talk about it, I would talk about it, but I didn't either.
Do you remember the day you arrived in Vietnam?
A day I'll never forget, when the plane landed, or even before the plane landed, as it was, I guess you call it decompressing the inside of the plane. It was just, you went from air conditioning to suddenly the humidity was like incredible and the heat was incredible. And when they opened the doors and you stepped out of the plane, you could hear explosions around. You could hear gunfire around, and the smell was atrocious, and the heat and humidity was, even just walking out of the plane was almost unbearable. But that's where you were going to be for the rest of your tour. Whether you liked it or not, that's the way it was.
And where were you stationed in Vietnam?
But I was in different places. When I first got there, I was in Long Binh, and all of the people that were shipped with me from some of them I knew, some of them I didn't, but they all had their orders to go to the 101st Airborne Division, and I had orders to go to the 101st Airborne Division in Phu Bai, and that wasn't good. I had done some research on that, and the casualty ratio there was terrible. I think only the 25th Infantry had more casualties than the 101st, but about 3 or 4 days after we got there, they called everyone out in formation, or not in formation, just everyone out into this area where they would announce your name and tell you who to go with, and that's the unit you would go with. When it came time for the 101st Airborne Division, they called out everybody's name except mine. And so in the barracks that all of us were in, from all of these guys left, and I went back to that barrack, and I was in there by myself, I don't know how many days, and I didn't know what was going to happen, but they called me out on about the 5th day, I think it was, and they told me that I would be going to the 52nd Infantry Regiment, which was attached to the 18th Military Police Brigade, which helped them provide security for the military police in various places in Vietnam.
And how did your first day overseas compare to your first day of training?
Well, other than the heat and humidity, the first day that I was there, like I say, we were just put in barracks and waiting for our to find out who our units were. Now, if you ask me what was my first day out in the field, that would be a different story.
How was your first day out in the field?
Well, when I first got to the unit, I spent about 2 weeks going through certain not expectations, but certain protocols, certain things that I needed to know. And I was put in charge of 10 to 12 soldiers. And I remember all of us getting together, and one of the first things that I wanted them to know was, because of those soldiers, the one that had been there the least amount of time had been there 3 months, and there was a couple guys that had been there 9 to 10 months, and the others 5, 6, 7 months. And like the first thing I told them was that I wasn't there to tell them to command them to do something that I didn't even know for sure how things were going to be. So I wanted them to know that I was going to depend on them as much as they were going to depend on me, but that you know, I was taking responsibility for them. I felt like that was something that I not only had to do but wanted to do to protect them in any way I could, but that they could probably protect me and themselves better if they knew something. If I were to say let's do this, give a command to do this, and they'd say no, that's not the way. I would say, okay, how do you want to do it? And that's what I would do. And so I got a lot of respect from them, and I respected them. And the first day I went out, the very first day that I was out in the field, I was standing with one of the guys that had been there a long time, and and all of a sudden I heard these. It sounded like whistles going by my head, about 10 or 12 of them, and he hit the ground, and I'm sitting there like looking at him like, what the heck are you doing? And about that time, he reached up and grabbed me by the shirt and pulled me down. And about that time, I heard 10 or 12 more uh, of that sound that we were being shot at. Well, in training, you're in a line with 20, 30 other soldiers shooting. You hear the guns and everything. So, and this was like a sniper type thing, and so it was like you never really heard the gunfire. So the bullets coming by me didn't. They were never like that in training, so I had no idea what it was. But he taught me by pulling me down like that. He probably saved my life, and so I never forgot him for that. And and so that's what the first day was like. And we tried to search out who did that firing to us. And I'm not going to tell you certain things I did in Vietnam. I will never tell that to anyone. But in that process, I did something that I've regretted for the rest of my life. And it was a mistake, but I was new, I was scared, and I did what I thought was right, but in the end, it was totally wrong.
How long were you stationed in Vietnam?
I was there approximately 11 months. I had applied to, actually, I was drafted out of college at Mitchell College in Statesville, and I was planning on going to Lenore College, which is Lenore University now. And so, like, I did apply for them, and so I got an early out, and that's why that time was shortened. Otherwise, I'd have been there for 12 months at least.
Was it difficult to keep in contact with your loved ones back home?
Yes, it was.
Are there any stories you would like to share from your time in Vietnam?
There's a couple. One I've just told you. Another is that uh, we had a commanding officer that came out of OCS, Officer Candidate School, that came in and wanted to assert his authority, unlike me. He didn't want to hear anything anybody else had to say. What he had to say was, that's what you were going to do. And he wanted us to line up in formation one morning, and only about 3 people showed up. So he got really angry about that. And I think at some point in time, I know at some point in time he stopped that, but he tried to do it over and over. But some people just wouldn't go out there. I think I was one of them because most of the people wouldn't go out there, just a handful. And so, I felt like it was the wrong thing to do too. And so, anyway, uh, while in base camp, I didn't like the guy, and most people didn't like him. But I let it be known I didn't like him. And um, about 2 months before I was to leave Vietnam, uh, somebody took a hand grenade and put a rubber band around, pull the pin, put a rubber band around the handle, put a cigarette in between the rubber band and the grenade, and walked away from it and put it at his hooch or his whatever you want to call where he was staying. And when the cigarette burned down and the rubber band went off, the handle flew off and the grenade went off and it blew him to in all kinds of pieces, but it didn't kill him. CID at the time, the Criminal Investigation Division, started investigating who did it, and there were 4 people on their list, and for some reason or another, I was on their list, and I was interviewed, and I told them, I said, I didn't like the man. He probably got what he deserved, but I don't wish that on anyone, and I didn't have anything to do with it. But I was told that until they found out who did, that I would not be leaving Vietnam. And so it got down to about 2 weeks before I was scheduled to leave when they finally, and I was getting really worried, when they finally found the man who did it, and it was an E7 who he had busted down to an E4. And this E7 had been in the military all his life. And so, I could see where he would be really upset, but there was enough death and destruction, that, and I guess he had seen so much that he was kind of cold to the fact that he could do something like that. I don't know.
That's wow.
Peyton needs a minute.
I need a minute.
Okay. What were all the places that you were stationed while you were in Vietnam? You said you were stationed a couple different locations.
Yeah, I was stationed just outside of Saigon, and also I would go to Tay Ninh, which was south of Vietnam, and I also went to the 1st Cavalry for a couple weeks, and I never could figure out why I was there, but and also I went to Tan Anh, which was kind of northeast of Saigon, where I was originally stationed. And then there were times when I don't know where I was. At one point, we were at a junction of 2 rivers, and I want to say that it was the Mekong and the Saigon River, but I'm not really sure about that. But we were in an APC, which is an armored personnel carrier, and we were put out onto this open field, and we're told that to expect the enemy to come across the river at that junction, and it was only one APC and only like 8 of us, and we're out in the open of everything, and it's like we're setting ducks, and fortunately nothing ever happened, except that we just sat there, and it would be hotter. You couldn't get inside the vehicle. It was hotter inside the vehicle than it was outside, so you just had to suffer through the consequences. And it seemed strange that you would that in a military so in a country so rich that we ran out of food, and so we actually ate the the indigent people's food, which I got to where I really liked. Never thought I would, but I had to try something. So
Mm-hmm.
and then we got taken out of there, and which was really good.
What did you do off duty? Did you ever go into the villages or anything like that?
Um, no, whenever I had the chance, um, well, I won't say no. Um, I did, but generally speaking, if I went off out of base camp, I'd go to the USO if I could, and the USO, like I said, is a great organization. I continue to support them this day because I know that all the troops that are all across the world, and especially in some places like Africa, the Middle East, and that's a very important organization.
What was the entertainment in camp? Did you ever get to go to one of the USO shows that they had?
No, but one of the USO shows came to us, and it was okay. I mean, it was uh, three women singers who had, at my age, you got to recognize I'm different now. I still recognize beauty when I see it, but they were really beautiful women. So it was like something we hadn't seen in a long time. So that was good to see. And I don't know if they could sing good or not, but that didn't really matter.
Hmm. Did you ever get to go on leave while you were in Vietnam?
Yes, I got to go to Hawaii. Well, I had a choice. I could go to Australia, Thailand. There were a lot of places I could have gone, but my wife was going to meet me somewhere, and so Hawaii was our choice. And so I spent, I think, a week. I think it was a week, maybe 10 days at the most, but I think it was a week in Hawaii with her, and uh, that was that was kind of perplexing because we hadn't seen each other for a while, and I had changed and she had changed, and so for us to connect with each other, it was a very difficult thing to do.
What did it feel like coming back to Vietnam from leave?
About the same way it felt when I went, except this time I knew it was going to be. I knew what to expect, or at least much of what to expect,
Mm-hmm.
and it was the same as when I started. Except I think they had an offensive that was what some termed as the uh, minor threat Tet offensive, and that was the enemy's way of trying to get our service people. What's the word I'm looking for? In order to drain us our mental self,
Mm-hmm.
and also to get the people back in the United States from protesting, or to help the protest and help the feeling of getting out of Vietnam. But
The psychological warfare aspect.
but that didn't succeed, and the uh, the government, the military, and the news and everything else was still reporting the cost of everything, and like a lot of people don't know, but in certain situations, uh, and I'm going back to my military training now, that especially at Fort Benning, almost everything we did physically, we had to yell the word kill, kill, kill over and over again in our trainings. And to me, that was like uh, the last thing in the world that I would. I mean, I never thought about that as growing up, or even up until the time I was drafted, or anything like that. And so, uh, but by the time I ended all my training and everything, I realized that, and got to Vietnam, I realized that that was something that, well, I don't know if it was necessary, but they felt like it was necessary to do to get us prepared. And so, whether we were prepared or not for what we saw, I don't think anybody was prepared for the actual what they saw or happened to be a part of. But yeah, that's pretty much the way it was.
What kept you going while you were overseas? And did you have any photos of loved ones from back home that you kept with you?
No, I never kept anything with me, um, and I was pretty much, I pretty much stayed to myself, except around the troops that were directly involved with me, and then the commanding officers and lieutenants uh, and captains. Yeah, those master sergeants, when you had to be whenever they were giving you orders or directions.
When and where were you when you learned that you were gonna go, that you were leaving Vietnam and going home?
Well, I was back at the outskirts of Saigon when I got the orders and or got the information. I'm not sure when I got the orders exactly, but again, uh, I wasn't sure I was even going to be able to leave then, and so I didn't let basically I didn't let anybody know because I wasn't sure myself, and I never told anybody at home why what my concerns were, the fact that I was a suspect in the bombing of that captain. And just to make a point here, um, one of my guys, and he was a real good guy, and he had been wounded a number of times, but he actually wanted to go visit this captain in the military hospital that wherever it was, I don't remember, and wanted to know if wanted to go with him. And even though I didn't like him, it was just something that it just hit me, and I said yes. And so when we got to the hospital and went in to see him, of course, there were other people in there as well that were wounded and worse, not much worse shape than he was, or they'd been dead because he had lost limbs. And uh, I mean, he was just in really terrible shape, and it was difficult to see. Even though I didn't like him, I didn't wish anything like that on him, and it was really difficult to see him lying there and knowing that his life would never be the same.
What was your reaction to learning that America was pulling out of the war?
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, I'm talking to Solomon, or not. What was your reaction to learning that America was pulling out of the war?
I was happy to see that happen for a number of reasons. One was I didn't think we should be there in the first place, and the other is that if we would have stayed in that war, then more people would have gone overseas, and that number on the wall in Washington would have been significantly higher than it is now.
Mhm.
And so I was glad to see us pull out of that war.
What was your last night in Vietnam like?
Well, it was as bad as every other night because um, in my unit, we were, well, depending on where we were stationed, but at certain points you had to go out in an armored personnel carrier. And if a armor piercing device would hit that APC and explode inside, then you were all but fried and you were dead. And so my last night, I got orders that we were going out, that my unit was going out into the night on patrol with an APC to a certain point, and I was shaking and I was sweating more than ever because I mean this was my last night, and I'm like, uh, you know, I don't, I really feared something happened, but ironically, and I think they should know this too. A new recruit or a draftee had came over there. He was only 18 years old, and he came to me. He was a private, and he came to me and he said, Sergeant Abernathy, he said, I will take your place so you don't have to go out. And I thanked him for that, and and I felt somewhat relief. But as we got closer to that time of actually going out, I got to thinking, okay, what if something does happen and he gets killed? I'll never be able to really live that for the rest of my life. So I went to him and I told him how much I appreciated it, but I said, I can't let you do it. And so I went out myself. And well, I'm here now, so I made it back.
What day did you return home?
It was in, well, I'll say this, it was cold. Uh, and so coming from an area that was, well, I went through San Francisco, but still, nevertheless, uh, which was another story because from San Francisco I went through 3 other states before I got to Charlotte. But it was cold, and it was like I think it was sometime in March, and it was still really cold there, here that time.
And how were you greeted and who greeted you?
Uh, my parents greeted me, and that was it. And uh, it was like I was coming back to, well, when the plane started. I'm going to go back just
Yeah.
when the plane started. When I got ready to load the plane to leave Vietnam, the next thing that came to my mind was that we might get shot down, so I might not make it out of Vietnam. I did have a window seat, and like the plane took off, and we did make it off the ground, and we got in the air. And the whole time that we were leaving Vietnam, I was looking back, and I was just wanting to not see land anymore, because I figured then we'd be safe. But then a thought came to my mind that, well, we might get shot down over water too. So it took a long time for me to get that out of my head. But after a while, I did. And when I got to Atlanta, there was some rough weather, but I did have a window seat there too. And I remember seeing another plane. They had a lot of planes circling the runway, and I did see a plane coming close to us, and our plane made a maneuver, a real quick maneuver that jerked us all around. And the pilot came across and said, we're suffering from, or we're experiencing some difficult weather, and so that's why this happened. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe the plane wasn't that close. But then it happened a second time, and I'm thinking like, I might not make it home yet. And he came across and said the same thing. Well, then finally we landed, and then the trip back into Charlotte was no problem. Did I answer your question? I mean,
You did, yeah. When you arrived in San Francisco, that was the first time back in the U.S., continental U.S. Did you experience any issues with protesters? Were you in civilian clothes or?
no, I wasn't in civilian clothes, but, and I can't remember exactly. I think we went into, landed on a military base. So basically, there was no greeting, I mean, there was a formal type thing in which we were told we need to do this, we need to do this. And I will bring up a point that happened in Vietnam too that caused me stress getting into San Francisco. And that was that I developed some kind of virus, I was told, that they could not identify. And the doctor who was in charge of my condition um, asked me or told me that if he put that on the records, that they would find that in Vietnam, in San Francisco, and that and they may find it anyway, depending on what they did, and that I would not be able to leave until they figured that out. And so uh, to this date, they've never figured it out, and I've gone through uh, the same uh, symptoms or disease or problems with my blood and problems with uh, a lot of different things that have occurred to me uh, for my body and mentally. It's because the physical part of it would take me out of everything. I couldn't do anything, and the headaches would be really bad. I would break out in sweats, and then I would start freezing, and then I'd start sweating again, and so.
They said it was a virus that you
And
contracted.
that's what they said. And then I don't know. Some years later, I went to give blood at the Red Cross, but they wouldn't take my blood because of certain things that they said that was you could develop in Vietnam that they couldn't take your blood for at least seemed like they said 15 years or 30 years or something. But from what I understand now, they still won't take uh, from some people I've talked with that are veterans, they still won't take their blood. So I don't know. So
What was being at home like when you got back?
it was like being a stranger in a strange land, and that's the way I call it because, and it was like, and this is something, if I can read to you,
Yes, please.
uh, that I have written that. Uh, I go that I look into the mirror and what or who did I see? I saw something or someone looking back at me. We're looking at each other, waiting for someone to speak. Who are you? What are you? I think. I think I should know you. I don't know you. I see darkness. I see no light. I lost my identity. Maybe that's me. How would I know if I've lost my identity? Who am I? What am I? I just don't know. Look, how will I ever know? Maybe never. I or we just don't know. And then I say, we or I'm trying to tell you or us. Does this sound crazy or not? It has no end. Or does it? Suicide. 23 a day now. Who and why? So maybe they lost their identity too. And I don't like saying this, but many times I've written about suicide, different ways of committing suicide. I say that, would I do it? No, I don't think so. But uh, due to PTSD, which I have chronic PTSD, um, I and physically things are. Uh, I'm developing things physically more than I had before. I have neuropathy in my lower legs, which is as a presumptive illness of Agent Orange, and uh, can you repeat your question again so I can get
Yeah. Oh yeah. What was it like being home?
okay, okay. And so anyway, there's other things I wrote later uh, about my jobs and relationships. Uh, my first marriage ended about 2 months after I came back from Vietnam, and I do not blame my wife for leaving me. If I could, I would have left myself because I was having flashbacks, and I and I was hurting her at night. I didn't realize I was doing it, and even one day we were sitting at the dinner table, and I had a flashback, and I turned the table. The table had food, everything on it. I just turned it upside down and got behind it, and to me, I was back in the war, and uh, all my relationships, I just ended them before I got too involved in them. I would really genuinely care for people, women that I would meet and go out with, but if I started feeling what I thought might be love, then I just walked away from the relationship. And that's the way it was. And the last person that my PTSD got so bad, and when I didn't get started treatment for PTSD, I didn't even know what it was, but I didn't get started treatment for PTSD until 42 years later. And I remember the therapist telling me and asking me to, if my wife, who at the time had two young daughters, if I would consider bringing them up so he could give them an idea of what I was going to be going through. And I remember him saying that at one point, and I know he said a lot, but one thing I'll never forget he said was that before it gets any better, it's going to get worse. And it got so bad that as much as I cared for her and loved her, I couldn't stay with her because I was hurting her too. And at one point, I did something that was so bad that if she hadn't uh, awakened me out of that nightmare, she may not be here today. And so, but she is very understanding of things. And so right now, she is best, the best friend I have, and probably one of just two friends I have. That's it. And I don't make friends. I've been pretty much self-isolated. Uh, I don't want to go to sleep at night. It's always at least 2 o'clock, maybe 3 o'clock, and I wake up all times. And I just want to say this uh, because this only happened about 2 weeks ago. That sometimes when I think the nightmares can't get worse, they do. And I woke up from the last one covered in sweat and shaking from fear. And even after I woke up and turned the lights on and was lying there, knowing that I was still shaking and I still felt like that I was being threatened. The nightmare lasted so long, and for 30 to 45 minutes, maybe even an hour after I was awake, I was hypervigilant, if that's what you want to call it. That's what a lot of people call it. But it was real to me. And so for me to think this will ever go away, I don't think it ever will until I change worlds.
How has your opinions about the war and the protests and the draft dodgers changed over time, or has it?
It hasn't, because in fact, I knew some people that one person in particular went to Canada uh, that was never heard from for such a long time. They thought he might be dead, but he had been traveling around and he was actually still alive. But no, it hasn't changed. And I think that because they didn't draft into after the 9/11 event, people, you know, you know, it was like Japan in December 7th when they attacked Pearl Harbor. That was a direct attack on our country, so to speak, and especially our military. And so you couldn't let that just. I mean, that's something that was totally different. And so the 9/11 was totally different. And so you had people volunteering like crazy to go against this. Now, the only thing I disagree about it was that, if Osama bin Laden was the person that was responsible for this, I think our government, the CIA, and other operatives could have found him and taken him out without going into Iraq and then staying there for 20 years. And and so that disturbs me too. In fact, I know of several Marines, one who I've known for a long time, that the burn pits and other things that they've gone through and loss of limbs, and that they're having their claims delayed or their claims denied. And it's just really upsetting that that they'd have to do 2 or 3 tours of duty or maybe more. And even some of them, even he was injured and still had to go back. And but these were people who volunteered to go. But I still don't wish them that. And I don't think that was the right thing to do either. And so I haven't changed my attitude about war or the draft. And another position I had that I was against the draft was it was unconstitutional because it didn't draft women. And at that time, you didn't want to say that because you didn't want women to be fighting in war. But now it's happening.
Yeah, they amended that, did they not?
Yes.
If they ever do a draft again, it will be men and women in the draft.
Well, I don't know about that, but women are volunteering and they're in combat.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And so, so it's just a change in time. But for me and for a lot of veterans and maybe all veterans, the time never ends. It's like every day, and I don't like using profanity, but I say I go through this every damn day and every damn night, no matter where I'm at or what I'm doing. And so it never ends.
Is there anything that you would have done differently if you could have, within your power to do differently? Obviously, you were drafted, so there wasn't a lot that you could change about that, but
Well, there was one thing I did in Vietnam that I didn't have to do, but I did do, and I kind of hesitate to say this, but I think I need to say it. Um, I went from being a person who was nonviolent, very respectful of people and everything else, and like uh, to when I first got over there, I was very upset about doing certain things, but then I became very cold natured. I mean, my heart, I didn't have a heart. I was just cold and angry, and so I did some things I didn't have to do, and I've never told anyone about it, and I never will. Uh, and I have numerous reasons for that. Uh, I'm not going to get into those now, but uh, that's one of the things I did. Is one of the things I have a nightmare. That's a nightmare that I have every night, and it's something I think about every day. And then the other things that come into play from my nightmares and my flashbacks are other things too. Some things I had to do and I didn't want to do. Some things I didn't have to do that I did. And so all that comes into play.
what advice do you wish was given to you when you were drafted? And what advice would you give to people thinking about enlisting today?
Well, that's tough. Uh, I would say that, one thing you can do, because I had several of my friends that uh, decided that before they were drafted, they would enlist in the Air Force or the Navy because basically, I mean, they still had combat units, I think, but generally speaking, you got to do something else. You didn't have to go into combat. And so, and you may not even gone left the United States. And so, you know, I'd say if you don't want to go into, if you don't want to be drafted, if you don't want to go into the Army or the Marines, which by the way, they were drafting into the Marines when I was drafted, and it came down to they had to draw numbers because nobody volunteered to be drafted. I mean, into the Marines, and fortunately, I didn't. Fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you looked at it, I didn't get one of those numbers, so I went in the Army and not the Marines. But I think it's something that personally that I subscribe to is that anybody can look at me or they can call me all the names in the world they want to. They can get right in my face and they can say anything they want to. But when you touch me, that becomes a different story. And so, just like with 9/11, just like with Pearl Harbor, that's touching you, so to speak. And so that becomes a different story.
Is there anything that we didn't cover today that you would like to add, or anything else that you want to share?
See. I did write something that did write something
Click it one more time. There you go.
I wrote this just a few days ago because I knew I was coming here, and so I'm just going to read it to you. At whatever level of training, you train together, everybody. You have your civilian lives, your way of living, and your values taken away. Then you lose your clothes and your hair. You become a part of a group where you are trained. You are programmed to kill. In many trainings, the instructors made you say, kill, 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 over and over again. But when I got out, I was alone. Everything was different. The experience of fitting in was absent. All that kill, kill, kill training and programming to make you a killer, there was no deprogramming to turn you into a civilian or a regular person again, to remove that training and experience that you were a part of. No one could help me, family or otherwise. Always since coming home, so to speak, because since I returned, I felt like a stranger in a strange land. I still feel like a stranger in a strange land. I have, among many other things, a diagnosis of chronic PTSD every damn day and every damn night. It never goes away. I'm 77. I experienced one of the worst nightmares I've ever experienced, and I've told you about that. That just happened a couple weeks ago. But I never thought I would ever have an experience that bad again after some of the nightmares that I've had. But it happened 2 weeks ago. That's it.
Thank you for sharing with us. What do you hope that people will remember or take away from your story? What do you want them to learn?
Well, several things. I don't think the majority of the population, and probably fortunately for them, really understand what military, especially combat veteran military, go through, and so it's not only just the veteran or the POWMIA or the person that gives their lives for their country, but their families are also affected by this. The wife, the mother, the father, the brother, the sister, the children, especially those that are married and have young children, and to have their spouse taken away from them. I mean, it's terrible to think about. And also, like when someone, it's nice for someone to say thank you for your service, but you can genuinely tell when they really mean that. And I'll give you one example of what happened to me at a produce stand one day. I walked in, and there was a lady sitting there with a little child, just barely able enough to walk, to talk. And the woman did not see me, but the child saw me, and I had my hat on, my army hat. And the child just turned around at me and said, "Thank you for your service." So what that tells me is that she is very respectful, and her husband probably is too, and that they're teaching their kid and to be respectful. And I think a lot of people just say it, and I always say I appreciate that, but sometimes I appreciate it more, and that was one time. And also,
I think another thing that I wanted to say about just like the memorial here on Memorial Day, I've heard people say this to me. They've said to other people, "Happy Memorial Day." Well, Memorial Day isn't a happy day unless you look at it from a different perspective, which it took me 76 years to look at it a different perspective, and that is that, you know what, these people who are on the memorial here and on memorials everywhere, and the wall, the people, their families, all this lost people through the military. Well, you know what? They're in a better world. So it is probably a happy Memorial Day for them. And so if it is, I'm proud of that. But I think just for, on this plane, so to speak, this planet, this earth, this country, uh, Memorial Day is a somber day. It's a day to honor those who have given their lives.
Our last question is, what do you wish more people knew about veterans?
The trials, the tribulations, the suffering that many go through, especially combat veterans, and that it's not just the veteran itself that's suffering through this; it's their families that are suffering through this too, and that that our government should be held more responsible for treating veterans in a better way. That the public should demand through their representatives that don't cut, don't deny claims when people have sacrificed their limbs and even their minds, so to speak, and that they deserve to have better treatment, and I hope that something will change, and if you can spend billions of dollars on bombs and planes and stuff to kill people, you know, when a veteran comes, I got turned down, I don't know how many times, 8 times for my claims. And finally, one of my claims I just started getting less than a year ago, that was turned down 5 times in the last 2 years. And so I'm happy for, I feel very proud of our VSO officers here in Catawba County. They helped me get that. I mean, they were very diligent and they told me, you're going to get it. And so finally I did. But, veterans shouldn't have to go through that. And people need to realize that that's what veterans go through every day, every day.
Well, thank you for joining us today, Mr. Smallbear. We appreciate you being here.
Well, thank you for having me here. I feel like it was an honor to be here. And so I hope that this will somehow or another make a difference or give someone insight into what veterans actually go through.